Hi, my name is Winsley, and welcome to my Heritor Doctrine tier list. At the beginning of April, I posted my complete Doctrine tier list, which looks like this. And today, I'm going to be going into why I placed each Heritor Doctrine where I did. While I expect that future expansions and patches will change how good some of these doctrines are and add a few others, the doctrines kept the values that they had when the game first launched up until the Tyrannosaurus patch, so for about 9 months, and I expect that these numbers will stay the same for a while now. Even if they do change, I think that these tier lists will remain useful, especially to new players who just want to get a little bit of an idea as to which doctrines I like to use when and why I like to use them. There are 97 doctrines that I could find in the game, and while I'd love to talk about them all in one video, I decided to break them into smaller, more digestible segments like this one. The first doctrine we're going to look at here is the Divine Legion in the A tier, and it is one of my favorite doctrines. It almost made it up in the S tier, but it just felt better down in the A tier next to all the other doctrines that I had down there. It didn't quite seem as competitive as the other ones in the S tier, but I know some people will disagree. I can tell already because it is a really good doctrine, and as you can see, it's got a little arrow in the top right hand corner of it, which means that if you invest in a certain strategy, it becomes a lot better. If you really like using Drained and their little mind control ability, this is just, it's an obvious choice for you. You should definitely be considering it. Now, you may be wondering why. Let's actually take a closer look at the numbers by jumping over to the game like so and looking it up in the Imperial Archives. So we have Divine Legion, and Divine Legion will give all of our drained units Essence Infusion, which basically says they have extra shields, 2 extra shields, Resurgence, and they can carry 2 more essence charges, which basically means that when they do damage, they can take some of the damage potential from the enemy away and give it to themselves. Every charge, I think, is plus 10% damage to the person who stole it, and the unit that lost it is going to lose 10% of their ability to do damage with Essence Drain. Resurgence, in case you aren't aware, basically brings back any units that die. I can look that up, right? Resurgence. Yeah, it says that when a unit dies and you win the battle, that unit is revived with 50% of their maximum HP. They just kind of come back at the end of the battle. The Desolate Forgotten start with that, which makes them really nice. And giving your Drained the ability to act like that is very nice. Now, let's compare this doctrine to what we have on either side of it on my complete doctrine tier list, which I just have to check really quickly here to see what is to the left of it and what is to the right of it. We have the next doctrine we're going to talk about to the right of it, and to the left of it we have a assembly doctrine. I believe that is Scavengers. So let's go pull up Scavengers next. And we'll just do that over here in the Imperial Archives like this. Scavengers. That will make it so that the rewards for clearing certain locations is increased. I think it's by 50%, which is very valuable, especially if you get it extremely early in the game, which you can. As a tier 1 tech, you can research this immediately, and I love doing that just to get as much out of those structures as possible. I mean, if you're going to go fight an army to get an extra pop from the shelter thing, this isn't necessary, but or if you're going to go after a Imperial Standard to give some experience to your units, this isn't necessary, but in most cases you want to grab this before you go fighting anybody. Divine Legion's a tier 7 tech, so I think once you get later in the game, you could argue that there's a lot more value in Divine Legion than Scavengers, and that would be fair. I think that would be a fair assessment, but this one is just slightly better. So something that I would generally use in every game that I play the assembly in. Now, what do we have to the right? I think it was the City of Awakened. City of the Awakened. Pretty important you get that the in there. Please tell me I have that in my tier list. Every once in a while I'll miss something like that. Is it City of the Awakened? Yeah, I got the whole thing. Woohoo, we did it. Go me. So City of the Awakened will give your units, no, not your units, it'll give your colonies plus 20 happiness. That's a lot of happiness. And it will make it a little bit easier for you to get more colonists. Every time a colony grows, it requires more food in order to get to the next level. Right here it's saying you need 58 food to get to the next colonist. With City of the Awakened, it'll just become 20% cheaper. You won't have to pay quite as much food. But if we compare 20 happiness income to our base of 6, yeah, that's a lot of happiness. It's almost as much as, it's more than what we can get at the very beginning of the game if we focus entirely on happiness. So pretty special, pretty competitive. I would say slightly worse than Divine Legion unless you're going for a very wide strategy and you need lots and lots of workers. Then I could see you arguing that City of the Awakened is actually better. So what do we have to the right of that? I think it's one of the armament things, or one of the protocols for the Promethean. Can't remember which one that is, so we'll just try and find that really quickly in here. Protocols. It's gonna be one of these, right? There it is. The defense protocol. I just want to double check that is the right one before I say too much about it. Yeah, that's the right one. So this will allow your colonies or your units within the domain of your colonies to get extra armor, which, you know, makes them harder to kill, and it gives you a little bit more operational defense from people who want to cast strategic operations or covert operations on you. And yeah, I could see that being more valuable than City of the Awakened, because you get some combat competency in your places if you're on the defense, and that's very, very nice. It'll allow you to hold the line with weaker units, and that operational defense can keep them from stealing a lot of energy using covert ops, and I know that is very, very valuable on those harder settings, but I think that there's just slightly more potential for growth and you know, power gaming if you go for the City of the Awakened than this one. This doesn't really allow you to continue contributing to your economy, which will allow you to snowball. This just kind of says we're going to have an easier time in combat if we are going to be getting into combat sooner rather than later. Okay, so let's jump on back to our tier list for the Heritor to see what is next. We have Technoclast Crusade down in C tier, and I think I know what that is, what it does, but I don't know for sure. Let's just pull it up in here using the Imperial thingies. I did switch over, right? Yeah, we're looking at the same thing now. So this says that if you're fighting against mechanical and integrated units, or rather it should be mechanical or integrated units, all friendly units gain plus 10% damage and have a 8 strength chance to inflict entropic decay. You know, I haven't actually tested this, but I thought that only applied to the mechanical and integrated units that you were attacking, but it may just be if there's one unit in the stack like that all of your friendly units get plus 10% damage. That does mean that it would be easier to apply that 10% damage, but you do have a condition that you have to fulfill to get that damage, and it may be that doesn't apply. I could potentially need to scoot this further up in the C tier because there are a lot of doctrines that work the same way. There's a condition that you have to fulfill, and if you do that, then you do more damage. And I bet this one's surrounded by it if I go over to my completed tier list, which I think it's time to do now. Let's go see. What do we have next to our friend Technoclast Crusade? I think, yeah, it's down here in the bottom left of C tier. I think it's in the middle towards the front end. There's one to the left of it that is covered by my face, and one to the right of it, which is Celestian. I may have to check its name actually really quickly before we go looking, because I can't remember what the Celestian's called. I think Bio Crusade is off to the left of it, isn't it? It's a Kir'ko one, Active Retribution, and then it's Bio Crusade. So let's go find Active Retribution, and then we'll find the Celestian one. So Active Retribution just says that your friendly units deal plus 10% damage to all non-Kir'ko units, which means that it does have a condition that you have to fulfill, but that's very, very easy to fulfill. It just doesn't give you a whole lot once you've done that. Plus 10% damage is one of the less significant boosts that you can't get in this area. Now, I know that the other one gives you something good against people who aren't enlightened. I just need 2 seconds to find it in my list of things here. I may have to make a cut. Oh, I got Celestian here. Is it Celestian Judgment? That sounded right. Yeah, it's Celestial Judgment, so let's just find that really quickly. Judge. I think it's Bill. Alright, so there you are. Nope, that's not the operation. This is it. We found it. This says that your enlightened units deal 10% damage to non-enlightened units, which means that you have to enlighten the units before they get the extra damage with like a mod, or maybe you've got one of your secret tech units that just starts off enlightened. But you could be going up against something that is also enlightened. The odds of that are pretty low, so once you've applied that mod, it's going to do 10% damage. It's pretty similar to the Kir'ko one we were just looking at. To be honest, those two are very, very close in their potential, and the Heritor Doctrine we're looking at isn't that far off. It's 10% extra damage if you fulfill a certain condition, and that condition isn't that hard to fulfill. In fact, all three of them seem about as easy to fulfill as the other one. They're slightly different, but they're on par. I think you could switch them around pretty easily. Okay, so what's next in our list? Let's go back to our Heritor one, and we'll see Inner Communion. Ah, yes, I know where Inner Communion is. I know that one well. So Inner Communion, that one I think has something to do with Essence Charge as well. Yeah, it just says that all units can now carry an extra essence charge. If you've got a lot of ways to pull essence off of the enemy, then you'll probably hit your maximum fairly quickly, fairly easily, and just being able to carry a little bit more could be great, but all by itself is not very useful. You do have to synergize with this doctrine to make it useful, and even if you do, I don't think it's very competitive with the late game doctrines. The amount of benefits you can get off the other doctrines will probably outweigh this one very, very, very quickly. But I'm not certain about that. I feel like there is a strategy where this is a good thing to grab, because maybe you'll be able to stack just that extra bit of damage on your hero unit, or maybe on a tier 4 unit, which would allow them to just one-shot everything on the map. So yeah, this one's pretty good if you fulfill those conditions. If not, pretty bad. Now let's check what's next to it on our tier list. I think, yeah, it's the first one in D tier because it can be upgraded pretty easily, and that means that we've got, oh boy, I've forgotten what that one is. Just looking at it, we've got a Devar thing off to the right, and what do we have at the end of C tier? Ah, yes, we have that synthesis operation. Synthesis operation, I think, is cyber something or other, so I'll just try and pull that up quickly. Cyber. Yeah, this one. So this is the one that is slightly better than what we were just looking at. This will give you +2 offensive operational points, and in addition, your strategic operations are 20% cheaper. So you can, yeah, cast those spells on the map, on the big map, a little bit more often. Well, for less money, not more often, unless you're running out of money. And I know it's not that great by itself, but I see more potential here in the Intercommunion Doctrine. Give me just 2 seconds to pull up the Devar stuff, and I'll be able to figure out what that doctrine is. It's a military industrial complex. Ah, yes, I know that one. I'll look it up so we can look at it together. But it makes sense to put that. Military industrial, yes, found it. So this just makes it easier to rush units, and it makes it so that, well, it doesn't just make it so it's easier to rush units, it makes it 25% cheaper to rush a unit, and in addition, the upkeep of heavy units is reduced by 35. Given that this is for Devar, it's easier to rush units in general for them, so it kind of pairs up nicely. But is it really going to save you 200 energy, and is it worth spending a doctrine slot on? Probably not. But I could see you arguing, if you go for a lot of heavy units and the game's going to drag on for a bit, that this will save you enough energy and it's definitely worth it. But I just can't see it. I think the Intercommunion is just better. You can kind of see that when you compare them side by side. And yeah, that's everything I wanted to say on this tier list. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe. I'll see you around.